Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Wormhole series in Kerbal Space Program. Today we're going to be testing out two of the best surface-based colony mods in Kerbal Space Program. Planetary-based systems, which I have here on the left, and Planetside exploration technologies. And so, yeah, we're going to be testing out these two mods. I built bases with each of them, and we're going to be going to the Simeht-Simetra system in the Kcalbeloh Planet Pack, and we're going to be putting each of these bases on two of its moons, and we're going to test it out, see which one is the best, or I don't know. You guys can decide that. But here we are, just breaking through the cloud layer. First stage detach. Yeah, and so I should also mention that I'm using for my interplanetary transfer vehicle. I'm using my near future craft from the near future tech mod from Norihc. I used this mod on my mission to the Nohric system, which is the brown dwarf system in the Kcalbeloh system. Anyways, it basically uses what's called a magnetoplasmodynamic thruster, which basically uses a nuclear reactor to produce a ton of electricity, and then it creates this giant electromagnetic field, and then you pump in gas. I think this one uses lithium, and it ionizes the gas, and then it shoots it out the back at really high speed, and it has a really good initial specific impulse, which means it's really efficient. Which is why I'm using it for this mission, because these bases are kind of heavy. So in order to have the delta V that I wanted to use something that was a little bit more sensible and capable. I've built stock part, just nuclear stage vehicles that can do this sort of mission, but they're huge, and so this one actually saves on space. Here I am setting up my transfer angle to Sarnus. I have Outer Planets mod installed, which basically adds Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto analogues to the Kerbal system, and it places the wormhole that's the entrance to the Kcalbeloh system around Sarnus, which is the Saturn analog, like I said. But don't worry if you don't have this mod installed, you can still play Kcalbeloh. It just places the wormhole around Jool instead. And so I've just set up my escape burn. We're going to have to split it into multiple different burns, because this thing doesn't have a very high thrust to weight ratio. So we're not going to be able to do it all in one burn. So I'm going to split it into a couple. And that's what I'm just setting up now. Alright, there's our first one. We're going to detach that lower stage. It's going to be time to turn on this magnetoplasmodynamic thruster engine. So I've turned on my nuclear reactor. You can see it's producing a lot of heat, so I have a lot of radiators. And I fire up that engine, and it's pretty quiet, but really high efficiency. And yeah, it's good stuff. And so how the nuclear reactors work in the near future tech mod is that they actually have nuclear fuel in them. So they actually have a lifespan. So I only have about 5 years worth of nuclear I guess not fuel, or maybe, but the nuclear reactor can only run for about 5 years before it's it runs out of juice or whatever. So what I'm doing is I'm just turning it on and off before each kind of burn, and I can save lifespan that way. Looks like I've set up my final escape burn to put us on a plot to Sarnus, and I'll just let you guys watch that for a second. I also have this ring thing, this habitation ring. That's from the Stock Alike Station Parts Expansion Redux mod. It's quite a mouthful, but I'm pretty sure it's by the same mod creator, Norihc. Or I guess I could be mistaken. I'm not sure about that, but it adds a bunch of really nice habitation rings and crew modules for your spacecraft for these long duration missions. Highly recommend it. It's stock alike, and it works really well. And it's got you can save on part count too. So instead of using that like times 32 like hack to get the radial rings. Like you can make like rings with stock in the stock Kerbal Space Program game, but like this saves on part count. So I just detached 2 of my radial tanks holding some of that lithium gas I was talking about. They're kind of in an asparagus kind of like setup where the outermost tanks fuel into the innermost tanks, and you can save on fuel that way. Or no, I guess not save on fuel. You can push your craft a little bit further because it carries its weight more efficiently as you burn through your fuel. So it looks like I'm gonna have to do kind of like a pretty big radial burn to adjust my trajectory. It looks like I overshot or undershot Sarnus just a little bit, but that's fine. We have plenty of delta V. You can see Kerbin shrinking in the distance there as we leave its sphere of influence, and yeah, we'll be on our way. Alright, so it's time to do this radial burn. It's about 1700 meters per second. Okay, it looks like that's about done. Now that we've got our intercept, we can start to just tweak our trajectory so that we can just, thread the needle through the wormhole here that orbits Sarnus. And so it's this kind of like light gray orbital ellipse around Sarnus, kind of further out. So I'm just trying to make sure that my close approach encounters are like right kind of at my periapsis. And you can get a little nice encounter there as you play with like the radial in, radial out, or like prograde, retrograde. You can, if it's not in the right spot in its orbit, you can play with those until it is. And so yeah, like when you're approaching the wormhole, you don't actually need to circularize around it to enter it, and you can save on a lot of fuel by just kind of like threading the needle, because you actually preserve your speed even onto the other side of the wormhole. So if you decrease all your relative speed to circularize around the wormhole on the other side, like if you dip into it, you'll still have to burn away from the wormhole. But if you preserve kind of like your speed through the wormhole, you can save on both of those maneuvers. I'm just warping ahead until we enter Sarnus' sphere of influence. Looks like we've arrived about just over 5 years in space. You can actually see it there on the left. But I actually have to tweak my trajectory even further just to make sure that I actually enter the wormhole. So I want to make sure that I'm still on the same like inclination exiting the wormhole as the Sarnus system. So I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not like being flung out like above or below the wormhole. So I just want to like make sure that I just get a nice clean like fly through. So I'm trying to make sure that my apparent exit trajectory is still in line with the orbit's inclination. And just a small burn to make sure that I fix that. Also, for the wormhole, I think you have to drop below 30,000 meters or 20,000 meters, something like that, to actually enter. But if you want to know a little tip, it actually looks way cooler as you go through the wormhole if you kind of like drop your periapsis low enough to where you even don't see a periapsis marker anymore. But looks like I'm just going in at 3,000 meters. And I'll warp ahead. You can see Sarnus on the left there. It's that little peach-colored dot. Wormhole's orbiting pretty far out in the Sarnus system, so that's as close as we're going to get to Sarnus. But here's the wormhole. I'll let you guys watch as we enter the wormhole. Pretty cool stuff. Alright, we're on the other side. This is the Kcalbeloh system. You can see that black hole there on the right in the distance. That is the black hole Kcalbeloh. The Kcalbeloh system has 3 different star systems that orbit this one black hole, so it's pretty cool. This mission is going to be taking place around the yellow, I guess it's like a more orangey main sequence star, just smaller than Kerbin. Called Norihc. So this is the Norihc system, one of the 3 star systems that orbits the black hole Kcalbeloh. So I've set the Simeht-Simetra system as my target, which is a binary gas giant system, and it's the furthermost planetary system in the Norihc system. And right now I'm just doing an inclination burn at one of my ascending or descending nodes to match my inclination so that I can get an intercept on the next orbit. And I just detached 2 of my radial tanks, so now I'm just on this main tank, and we're looking like we have about 6,500 meters per second of delta V left. And right now I've just set up a little circularization maneuver just to like circularize around the star. It'll be a little bit easier to get an encounter with the circular orbit because I can just like pull out the prograde marker, and if I've missed Simeht-Simetra system, I can just swing that around, and it keeps my apoapsis in roughly the same place until I swing it around enough to where I can actually intercept the Simeht-Simetra system. So that's a little cheat for you guys. Just like you would get a moon encounter, or a mun encounter, I mean. Cool, so that maneuver is complete. Now it's time to try to get our Simeht-Simetra intercept here. Alright, there's our encounter. I'll just warp ahead until it's time to do that burn. Alright, we've got that intercept, and let's just zoom in and see what our trajectory is looking like. So our first destination, today we're going to be testing out one of the bases. This is going to be a part 1, part 2 type deal. We're going to be testing out the planetary base systems mod on the ice moon of Nohric, which is this kind of like middle, like white orbit line here that I'm aiming for. So I'm just adjusting my trajectory into the system, and I'm going to just do a quick capture burn around the system. And I encountered a little glitch here. I don't know if this is helpful to anybody, but I have BlackRock's new deferred lighting on, and I think it goes haywire in this system because it's actually got like 2 giant gas giants to reflect light off of. It doesn't know how to calculate both at the same time. That's my guess. But I just went in quick and uninstalled that mod for the remainder of this mission. As far as I know, it works great everywhere else. I've always had kind of like lighting, like small lighting glitches in this system though. So we captured around the Simeht-Simetra system. Right now I'm doing an inclination matching burn at one of my ascending or descending nodes relative to Nohric to make sure that I'm on the same plane. And then I'll be able to set up my encounter here. I'm just making sure that my periapsis intersects its orbit. And there's our intercept. Cool. So let's just execute that burn real quick. And we'll have to wait another orbit to actually get our flyby. But here's Nohric. And just adjusting my trajectory there. And a warp ahead till we've entered the sphere of influence. Alright, now it's time to do a small circularizing burn at Nohric periapsis. It's a really cool planet. It's kind of like marked by these giant like striation like chasms, or like, you know, it's got giant cracks in the ice, which are really cool to explore. I think it's got about 0.42 Gs, so fairly comfortable half Kerbal gravity, and it's got a really thin atmosphere, but thick enough to where you can use parachutes to land with maybe the assistance of a small burn to slow down once you are about to hit the ground. So right now I'm just doing my circularizing burn. Yeah. You can see the black hole Kcalbeloh there on the left in the distance. Pretty cool stuff. Alright, so we're circularized around Nohric. Now it's time to detach one of these bases here and send it into the atmosphere. I've just kind of like set it up so that they'll just kind of like tumble through the atmosphere until I can pop open these fairings, and then I'll open the parachutes and use a little sky crane type mounted engine on top to slow down at the very end. Yeah, pretty jank, but these are the kind of sacrifices you have to make if you want to land two different bases on two different moons in the same mission. So I've just detached my the base from the Planetary Base Systems mod, and I'm using this RCS to lower my periapsis below the atmospheric line. So we're going to be, looks like we're already on kind of like a trajectory to hit the ground, so we'll have to see where we end up. But the entry is going to be kind of tumbly, if that makes sense. Popped open that fairing. The atmosphere is pretty thin, so I'm not getting any like re-entry effects or re-entry heating. I'll just detach that RCS module. And I'll deploy my parachutes here shortly. Looks like we're going to be landing right next to one of these giant ice cracks in the crust of the moon. We're still coming in pretty hot, so I have to turn on my engines for the sky crane here and fire up real quick before I hit the ground. Oh, hit the ground kind of hard, but looks like everything's okay. So here we are, landed. This is going to be our base site. Pretty cool. Looks like we're in the kind of like a more mountainous region of Nohric, right next to one of these really cool ice chasms or cracks in the ice. So let me just turn on the engines here and detach the sky crane. That'll go crash somewhere. And I'll start setting this base up. Like, this is the Planetary Base Systems mod. It's got some really cool features, mainly like these pistons here, or these like piston jacks here. You can use to like really make sure that your base is leveled out really nicely. And it also has a really nice like integrated rover system here that I've got attached on the left there, or the right, I guess if I'm looking at it from the back. Anyways, it's got some really cool parts. like a staircase leading up to these habitation modules. And on this base, I have 2 habitation modules, a science lab, and a hydroponics module, which is where we're going to be growing our food. These are the habitation modules. Looks like we just got a giant table there. These are the hydroponics module. This is the coolest one for sure. This is where we're going to be growing all of our food and maybe producing some of our oxygen to supply our base. But yeah, these the interior models are very realistic. This is a pretty realistic base kind of setup. This is the science lab. And this is the airlock. And let's get out and put boots on the ground here. Plant a flag. Anyway, this place is really cool. Really happy with the landing site. I love this moon because you can see the 2 gas giants, Simeht-Simetra, in the sky very clearly, and it's just a crazy view. Probably one of the best views in the Kcalbeloh system, actually, in my opinion. They're actually ice giants. They're more similar to our own Neptune or Uranus, or so they're ice giants, which means that they're a little bit smaller and colder than Jupiter or Saturn. They produce really cool eclipses on each other. Anyway, I think it's time to go for a little rover ride. We brought this rover with the base, and we're going to probably take it over to that giant ice chasm and check it out, as well as test out this rover system from the mod. Anyway, it's got a really cool interior, and the way that the wheels are mounted are pretty good. The way that the wheels function are pretty good compared to the other wheels in the stock Kerbal Space Program game, and it has its own kind of docking port on the side that is kind of standardized so that it lines up really well with the other modules. So it's really easy to dock your rover to the base. But right now I'm just kind of driving through these little foothills here to get over to that ice chasm that we saw on our way in. Having trouble going up some of these inclines here, but if you do kind of a zigzag pattern, it helps. Oh, almost flipped over there. That would have been terrible. Alright, now here is the giant ice crack. Anyway, the moon is chock full of these things just all over the crust, and maybe that has to do with tectonic activity in the moon, or maybe it's tidal forces from the ice giants that it orbits. Well, yeah, let's get closer. Alright, let's get one of my Kerbals out here and go jump off the cliff. I know you guys want to see that. I just hit a quick save real quick so I can revert after this little misadventure, but I thought this would be really fun to jump off. Oh, Well, that's why we hit the quick save, so I'll just revert back to before his untimely demise. And we'll call it good for the day. And let's head back to our base here. And we'll show you how this thing can dock to the base. It's actually pretty cool. And there we go, nice and docked. Anyways, guys, this has been part 1 of my planetary mod base showcase. This has been the mod Planetside Exploration Technologies, and we've tested it out here on Nohric. I guess for my thoughts on it, I think the Rover is probably the best part of this mod. The exteriors I think are also really great. It has a more like realistic style than the other one. The interiors especially are very realistic. And I think it goes great with like more like realism overhaul kind of setups where it's like just a little bit more realistic of a surface base mod, which is really cool. This has been part 1, and next week I'll be landing the other base from Planetary Base Systems mod on a different moon of the Simeht-Simetra system. And then after that episode has come out, I'd like to hear what your guys' thoughts are. Leave a comment in the comment section which one you guys like the best, and maybe try them out for yourselves and test them out. Yeah, but thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for part 2 next week. I'll see you later.